Sara Schulting-Kranz, welcome to the Passion Project.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh.
I'm stoked.
I'm so stoked to have you. You're so fun.
Thanks.
This is going to be fun. We haven't seen each other much lately, but we go way back. And that'll play, well, not way back.
Yeah, way back. Yeah.
But way back enough that a lot of what you do, which we're going to talk about in just a second, I've watched that kind of transformation happen. Because we'll talk about when I met you, what you were doing, and what you're doing today is rad. It's amazing.
And that's why you're here. I honestly don't even remember.
You will. By the time we're done, you will remember.
Okay.
So
there's been so much.
There has been a lot. So Sara, it's wonderful to have you here. You're the perfect candidate for the Passion Project. Like if there's a person that lives with passion and does rad, amazing things, and as I would say, good people doing good things or rad people doing rad things or badass people doing badass things, that's you.
Thanks.
And that's what we're going to talk about today, and that's why you're here. So for the audience sake, I'm going to do a quick intro, and then we're going straight into it.
Perfect.
Cool?
Perfect.
All right. So the way I see it, and we use the word passion already, but certainly a passionate mom of 3. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about your family. Keynote speaker, like not small platforms, like public companies, private companies, TEDx, incredible. Best-selling author, walk through this, which we'll talk about the genesis of your book, which is rad. Professional life coach and mentor. There's so many here, Sara, it's so amazing. Extreme adventurer and athlete, and really under the guise of like hike, run, paddle.
Yep.
And there's a lot there, which we'll talk about in just a second. Grand Canyon and wilderness guide and retreat leader. Yep. And some of this you were doing when I met you, and some is new in the last 10 years, which is really cool to watch. A blind athlete guide.
Yeah.
Which is incredible. And I got the really cool call up to do that with you once. So I look forward to talking about it. You're a podcast host as well, your own podcast, which is fun to have you on the opposite side of the mic today. Keep you on your heels a little bit. And that's Live Boldly with Sara. Mm-hmm. There's a movie? Did it ever?
No, so the movie's actually been shelved for a little bit. It. And I think that there's reasons for that.
Okay, well, we'll talk more.
Maybe we can talk about that.
Yeah, but more, again, showing the levels of Sara.
Yeah.
And if anything, I would say you're this incredible positive force to help others by doing really good things. And your story is a big part of how you've ended up here. So we're gonna dig into all of that and walk our way through. I always say we'd like to connect the dots.
Yes.
Because I met you kind of, as I said, in the middle of whatever you've become today. But prior to that, I've only know bits and pieces through the stories, but how you end up here is always super, again, that's kind of what I want to capture here is people that know you from your retreats or from your keynote speeches or from your book or your podcast, they'll know bits and pieces as well, but there's going to be a lot that's going to be super, I think, formative as to what has gotten you here. But it's been fun to really watch because I've seen you evolve. Like this book didn't exist when I first met you, and the podcast didn't exist, and all the keynote speaking didn't exist. So what you've done with it and how, and the genesis for that is a big part of your story, which we'll get to, right?
I'm so stoked to be here with you and to have this conversation.
So fun.
I can't even express enough. So thank you.
Well, perfect. So let's start we'll help everybody kind of get a flavor of who you are and what you do. Can we start with, we're not going to go the Wayback Machine quite yet, Sara?
Yeah, it's totally good.
Well, we're going
Start
there.
Wherever. Start wherever.
No, we're going to start.
Matter.
What did you do this weekend? Just this past weekend? Something small.
So I have reconnected. I'll give you the genesis, the backstory of this. I reconnected with my high school sweetheart after 32 years.
His name is?
Joe. He's such a sweetheart. So literally when I was 12 years old, I walked into this room and it was at church and we were taking a class and I was like, oh my God, you're the cutest thing ever. 12 years old. And so when we're talking about connecting the dots, I think that's what life is about. And so that was a dot, right? And then in high school, we went to one dance together. Our lockers were near each other. And all these times I was like, God, he's so cute. But I didn't think he really knew I existed. Whatever. He was a shy man, young boy, teenager.
And this was where?
Back in Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. I grew up in a very small village, 1,100 people. Yeah, so our high school literally, there were 56 people or something like that in our class. And our high school was in the middle of a cornfield. And so, long story short, we went to one dance together. We both went our separate ways. And then 32 years later, 1 year after my mom passed away, which I was very close with my mom. My mom kept saying to me, I want you to meet somebody from back home. I want you to date somebody from back home. And I was always like, who the hell am I going to date from back home? Like, I graduated with 56 people. Everybody's married. Everybody's doing their thing. So 1 year after she passed, I posted something on Facebook. He made a little comment underneath. And then I responded to the comment. And then he reached out, and then I ghosted him for like 30 days because I was like, I don't know his intentions. This was forever ago.
And you hadn't seen him?
And I hadn't seen him.
In 32 years?
No, and we had I think like one high school class reunion, we maybe were in the same room, right? And so I sent him a text back, and I just said, okay, give me the what's been going on in your life. Let's do the highlight reel. Now, I don't need the whole documentary, whatever. We got the documentary. We went out for one beer, and that was it. And so that was a year ago, August, that we reconnected. So fast forward, he lives in Wisconsin. I live here in California. So we fit. He's got 3 girls. I have 3 boys. He's also a grandfather. So, he's a busy man. And so we try to fit in, right? Like create that space. And so we were going to go to the Grand Canyon, which he had never been to. And that's my space because I lead retreats there. And I said, well, let's go to the Grand Canyon over Valentine's Day. And unfortunately, my son had a basketball game, as happens. But we still fit it in, right? And I think that's when people talk about your passion, which we'll dive into, you have to fit in the things that are important to you. And one of the things that he always says is, let's not give each other leftovers. Let's create that space so we can actually have the good meal together, right? Like that's the life, that's the living. So, so we somehow or another between Friday night and Sunday drove to the Grand Canyon, and we hiked it rim to rim to rim because I'm like, if we're going to see this, let's see it all. He wants to see it all. That's how he is too. And so that's what we did. So I went to the Grand Canyon and we hiked rim to rim to rim.
Okay, so first and foremost, incredible. And that was his first time to the Grand Canyon.
It was his first time to the Grand
Canyon. So the
Canyon.
rim to rim is no small feat, especially in winter. I was like,
it's so crazy.
Because the North Rim is close. So for the audience sake, talk about what is the rim to rim and what's the rim to rim to rim. Obviously, you can figure that out.
Right. So the rim to rim, it depends on which trail you go down, but this ended up being like 48 miles. So you're hiking from one side of the canyon to the other, and then you have to hike your whole way back again because there's no way to get to the other side because the North Rim is closed in the wintertime. And so for the last 2 miles up, there was snow. And the snow got pretty deep, I have to say. It was pretty mushy. And so it was a lot.
You started on the South Rim,
We started on the South Rim, and then we hiked up to the North Rim.
Which is closed in winter.
Which is closed.
The hotel, there's one hotel, the historic hotel on the north. I talk about it because I've done the rim to rim one way, twice. One of my favorite things I've ever done. But I've never done the rim to rim to rim. Because it's a significant 48 miles. You said there's a lot of elevation. You're 100% self-contained.
Yeah.
And weather, it changes significantly from the rim to the base, to the bottom.
Yeah.
And it was snowy. Talk about, so just a quick nutshell of what that was like, and what was it like for Joe, his first time ever doing the Grand Canyon, and you putting him through 48 miles?
Well, so understand, he's crazy and a crazy adventurer like I am.
Awesome.
That's the thing that I think threw me, because it threw me for a loop because I had no idea. I wanted somebody in my life that could match my energy and passion. Not many people. No, and that was the thing. That's why I was single. I was single for 12 years, or 11 years, I guess. And I was like, I would find people, but I couldn't find that match, or they would be matched in one way, but not another. And I'm not somebody that wants to settle. I'm like, I want to freaking live life to the fullest, because I had already gone through a very traumatic time in my life, right? And I'd come out of it and I was on the other side, and I'm like, if I have done all this work, and if I become this person that I am, that person that I meet had better have done the same, or want to at least get to that space and then lift each other up to become even better than what we are, right? Like better versions. And so he's already done, in the time that we've been together in the last year and a half, we did.
You put him through his paces?
Yes, he has been through, definitely. We did, I was section hiking the Sierra High route for the last 3 years, which is the most difficult and one of the most dangerous routes in the United States. So there's no trail.
And
You're
where is that? I'm not familiar with it. What's
Oh,
that?
you got to do it.
But-
It's the highest peaks of the Sierra Nevada mountains in California. So
And when you said it, you called it section hiking, so that means you're just doing pieces of it each time.
yeah, because it's 120-ish miles total, and there's no trail. So you're waypointing your way through the mountains. You're going up like some very dangerous passes, and it was something that it kind of like I was elevating to it. So I'd already done the John Muir Trail, which was 22 days in the backcountry. And when I was out there, I met somebody that was doing the Sierra High route, and I was like, what's that? And they told me, and I went, ooh, that sounds kind of cool and extremely dangerous and not something I want to do. And then lo and behold, the next year I'd start doing it. And because I was like, okay, kind of intrigued by it. So instead of doing the whole thing at one time, because you're self-supported and it's exhausting. So we decided to section hike it. And so I had been section hiking it with one of my dear friends, and then Joe came into my life, and I was like, well, we're doing the Sierra High route if you want to join us. And he had never done anything like that before, and it was a test for him, and he loved it. And I was like, okay, check, you have now officially checked every box possible. And yes, now I know that when I'm out there doing the things that I want to do, living the way that I want to live, I have that person next to me that I can also lean on, because it gets dangerous sometimes, Like, I don't want to just take somebody out there that's never done any of this stuff before. So, so he had already passed some of my tests.
That's so rad. So, yeah, for anybody, so let me back up for a second. A couple things. Question: how happy is your mom?
Well, my mom passed away.
I know, but how happy is your mom?
I know. So, so that's the thing that, like, I'm a spiritual person. When my mom passed away, she passed away July 6th, 2022. And I think that being out in nature and doing the things that we've done, you've done, I've done, we've experienced some incredibly spiritual moments that are like, you can't describe them. At least I have. And when she passed July 6, 2022, I had to go to the Grand Canyon the very next day to lead a retreat. And I asked in fact, that month I was leading 3 retreats. And I asked my dad, we were on the phone, he had called me and said she had passed. And I said, well, what do you want me to do? And he goes, well, what would she want you to do? I said, well, she would want me to keep doing my work. And he goes, that's going to be the place where you're going to heal, because you're also taking other people in to do their own work. And so I went to the Grand Canyon, and I always had conversations with her about, me meeting people. Like, I did want that partner. And when I was hiking down into the Grand Canyon, literally it was July 8th, and I had a conversation with her, and I was almost to the bottom, and I said, I just want to know that you're okay, and I want you to be guiding me just like you guided me in life, right? Because that was my big thing. Like, my mom was my guide. Mm-hmm. We all need a guide. We all need a mentor, and she was mine. And I got to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. I kid you not, I looked up into the sky, and a perfect rainbow went around the sun, formed around the sun, and the clouds formed into a perfect heart right in the middle. And I looked up, and I'm like, oh my God, like, she's here. Like, she's never leaving me. And she will continue to be my mentor in death, just like she was in life. And my clients were just like blown away. They're like, wow, like, this is a moment.
Did you tell them?
Oh yeah, they knew everything.
Yeah,
they knew, because before I took them in, I said, I just want to let you know that my mom is passed, and I'm going to do the best that I can because come on, like, you got to be vulnerable and authentic in those situations, because I'm also guiding them, right? And I said, and I promise you that this is going to be a more powerful experience because of what I'm also going through at this moment. And so them witnessing that, the conversation that I had with her, what had happened in that moment, it was such a powerful moment for them, just like it was for me. And then for this whole thing to happen in my life, like my relationship, which is something that she wanted so desperately for me to be with somebody, because she saw what I could also offer as her daughter, but then also what I deserved. And so for that to happen 1 year later was just like, I don't know, it was mind-blowing for me. And so I always look at it, I'm like, you know what? She's always there. She's always there.
Think she's happy?
She's very happy.
Hallelujah. Good for you.
She's very, very happy.
It's a great story.
Yeah.
So you took your man and you went in wintertime and did 48 miles through the Grand Canyon. Super awesome.
Yeah.
And then you jam back to a basketball game.
And then we had the basketball game the night before we left, and then we came back. No, we had to jam home because he had to catch a flight. So we jammed
Was he a little sore on the airplane?
Oh, I think so.
I just want, like, I think we painted a picture of who we have in the room. Let me ask you a question. Because I think context is important, especially with all that you've done. Do you mind sharing how old you are?
I'm 51 and
You're
a half.
51 and a half, and clearly not slowing down. In fact, most of this has happened in the last 10 years, right?
Yeah,
or less.
I was 40 when my life literally like imploded. My life was, I'm not the same person. My life was such a freaking mess.
Okay, we will get there. I wanna step back a little bit and talk through, because that is what I would with you consider like to be pivot, like the big pivot, right? Maybe that's a nice term for it, but it's very transformational and pushed you. Like, let me ask you this. I know I'm foreshadowing a lot, but like, had that not happened, would you be doing any of the things we're talking about?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Really interesting, right?
And I always say to people, I'm like, your most difficult moments, don't give credit to the person that created that difficult moment, because I think that sometimes people do that. They give the power away, where they're like, well, yeah, but if he hadn't betrayed me, then I wouldn't become the person that you are. No, screw that shit. Sorry, can I cuss in this?
100%.
Awesome.
I prefer it, actually.
Screw that shit. Like, to me, it is, never give your power to the person that created it. Give your power to the person, yourself, that have become the person that you are because of it. And so for me, that's where I'm constantly like, that's the pivot point, right? You go one way, you go another. We were talking about this beforehand. Mm-hmm. How many people in that moment can go one way or the other? And for me, it was, I'm choosing the good. Like, I'm going to choose to create something from this, because if I don't, then I'm going to continuously be giving power back to the moment that all of that happened, right? So, yeah.
Well, listen, and it happens so often in here. If anybody pays attention, like, I already said that you're a mentor and a coach and a public speaker and an author. Like, just the words you use and the phrases you use are straight. That's why you're a successful coach, speaker, author, because the way you think and the way you communicate and the processes that you've whether acquired or learned or whatever and that you share, sounds like a coach.
Yeah.
I mean, 100%.
Yeah.
And I commend you for that, because you wouldn't be able to have the influence that you have on all the people that you impact if you didn't have this probably experience that has driven you to learn or develop or be coached yourself on the ways of thinking differently, right?
I think the other reason that I am that way is because, and Joe and I talk a lot about this too, because he does a lot of leadership training himself through the work that he does. I feel like I know we only have so much time in this world. And the one thing I'm not going to do is waste time beating around the bush when I can go straight in, right? And so even when I'm working with my clients, when I'm talking from stage, when I'm doing any of the work that I'm doing, when I'm sitting with my kids, I literally say to them, can I go straight in? Like, can I just, can we be clear here? Because I'll take it soft if you want me to, or I'll go straight in. And, you know, there needs to be a little bit of permission sometimes, because I know sometimes people, they think, okay, she can be a little harsh or whatever. It's not that it's that I literally don't want to waste time.
No, it's
like, you know what I mean? Like, we only have so much time here.
It's a great distinction to recognize. Some people once you've established a relationship, like, hey, with Sarah, I can go straight in, but with George, I got to soft sell it, and maybe I ask permission. But I think it's really smart that you recognize, like, I'm going to ask permission. Are you good if I take the gloves off right now? Like, let's go. Like, it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I mean, in your experience, what I hear is like, you recognize that life is short, play hard, work hard, and don't beat around the bush.
Don't beat around the bush.
Super smart. Listen, I was going to take us back to the Wayback Machine a little bit, but we've already talked about Wisconsin and growing up there, small town, small school. Joe was in your class when you were 12, the influence of your mom. and sounds like your dad. Talk a
Yeah.
bit about the influence of your parents, because the one thing, you've got this very clear view of your world now, but I'm wondering where you were looking back then. So you go to the small school, like I don't know how you ended up in California. So let's talk a little bit about like your path.
Right.
So you're going to school. Did you have aspirations to go? I don't know if you went to college. I don't know if you went straight into a career. I don't know. Like talk a bit about growing up and how you ended up here, and then we'll dig into family and the path.
Yeah. So I grew up in a very small village called Black Earth, Wisconsin.
Black Earth?
Black Earth. I know you'd love that.
Interesting.
I know. My family was always very tight. There's 5 of us in my family. I have 2 brothers. I'm the youngest, literally 1, 2, 3. Like we're right next to each other. And my brothers were always they were great influences in my life, good models. My parents, amazing parents. We would go on vacations every year. My parents were very adventurous. I had a great home life. I ended up going to the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I was an art teacher. Yeah.
You were an art teacher?
I was an art teacher.
At what level?
So I taught elementary, and I oversaw the art department. Isn't that funny?
I had no idea.
I oversaw the entire art department of the school district.
Okay, but see, those right there, adventurous family, and you're a teacher. You were, again, you look where you are. You're still teaching and coaching.
I'm still teaching
you
and
were
coaching.
And sometimes it might feel like those elementary school kids, even though they're adults.
Can I tell you? What's funny to me is I loved teaching. I loved teaching, and it was a passion of mine. And some of those students that I had from way back then, I mean, we're talking 30 years ago. Like this is forever ago. I'm still connected to those kids. I can remember the artwork that they created back then. I can take myself back to the classroom and tell you exactly what Zoe Lake created.
Wow.
Yeah, it's wild to me. And so anyhow, I never wanted to quit. I loved teaching. I did get married though, and I followed my former husband out to California because he wanted to move and he wanted to build in his career. And I was like, okay, well, I'll give up mine and I'll follow you. And that was hard for me. That was a very hard time in my life because I loved teaching so much. At that point though, we had 2 children, 2 boys, and then we had the 3rd when I was out here. So I became the stay-at-home mom. I took care of everything. I was the volunteer. I ended up doing other things like volunteering for my son's Young Artist Symphony Orchestra, and took them, created the trips that took them overseas to play in China, for the Olympics, and just like all these different things that I ended up doing to fill that space in my life where I had that passion to do something more. And I always, here's the thing, like I always knew there was more there, but I couldn't figure out what it was. I wanted to give back. I wanted to do more in my life. I knew that there was like this space of inspiring other people to live their best life, but I couldn't figure out where the flame was coming from. So my entire marriage, and when I was the mom, I was constantly trying to kind of instill it in the kids, like take them places, do things with them where it was like adventurous but then fast forward and I ended up moving from Northern California to Southern California, and then my life imploded.
Okay, so you guys moved from Wisconsin
to Northern
and
California.
How long were you married when you were living in Wisconsin, and how long did you teach for?
So we actually so when I graduated, we went down to St. Louis. I lived there for 2 years. Then we moved back to Wisconsin. I don't even remember how many, like 5-7 years that we lived there. Then we moved to Northern California.
But you were teaching the whole time you were there?
I was teaching the whole time I was there. Yep, in St. Louis, in Wisconsin, I was teaching. Loved teaching.
All elementary art.
And I oversaw the art department, so I did curriculum and instruction. Wow. I did some of like the human resources kind of stuff where I would fire and hire people, and loved it. And then moved to Northern California and gave up that entire part of my life to stay at home with the kids because there was no teaching out there. I would have to go back to school to get my teaching certificate and my credentials. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. So ended up instilling my life with other things to fulfill myself in a way that I couldn't get otherwise, right?
And what were those other things?
Well, like the creating, the teaching, the volunteering for my son's orchestra, like I said, like giving back in a way and still inspiring other people in a way.
So being involved.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Gotcha.
very hands-on and just trying to give back in ways that I couldn't otherwise.
But a way to kind of fuel that flame, as you mentioned, right?
Right.
Like,
right.
get something that you weren't, because you weren't getting what you used to get from teaching.
Exactly.
Okay. And where in Northern California were you?
I was in Walnut Creek.
Oh, I know it well.
Yep.
I have a hardware store right there in Lafayette.
Oh, I like Lafayette.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And then you moved to
Down here, to Southern California,
Where did you
Hermosa
guys
Beach.
to Hermosa, which is where you still are, right?
That's where we are right now, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in a super quick nutshell, just because we talked to kids, give a quick overview of the kids and what they're doing.
So my oldest is 33. He's an entrepreneur. He does like AI stuff and like all computer stuff. My middle is 23. He just graduated from USC. He's actually now working with me, which has been very fun.
Wow.
Yeah, he was the captain of the USC men's water polo team for the last 2 years.
No small feat. Holy
No
schmoly.
small feat.
That's top of the top.
Yeah, so he played water polo there for 5 years. And now he's kind of like in the figuring out where is he going to go with that? What's his path, next path? And so during this time, he decided to come work with me. So he is doing all of my marketing and sales and marketing. And I actually led the USC men's water polo team on a day of leadership mindset work and team building down into the Grand Canyon in June of 2024, which is part of the reason that he's like, I want to come work with you because I experienced this like transformation within our team because of the work that you're doing. And so now I want to help you to up level into that next space. So when your kid starts telling you that you're not even barely touching your ceiling after you've been telling them that all those years, it's talk about full circle. Like
Wow.
It's really fun.
But
yeah.
how friggin' special to have that relationship with,
Yeah.
and have had that kind of influence over him and his team and to see it. Like, that's a hard thing with kids. I always say, like, sometimes I have to tell you to talk to my kids. I'm going to tell you exactly what to say. You're going to say to them, and it's going to have way more impact than if I say the same thing.
Yeah.
But for them to recognize, like, wow, mom's friggin' gnarly. This is rad.
It was
right?
it was really fun. Oh my
That's
God,
so
taking
cool.
that team down, it was such an experience. And then my youngest is 23. My youngest is 18, and he is a senior in high school playing basketball. So he wants to go to college and play. He's the starting guard on the varsity basketball team. So it's cool because they're in the semifinals right now of CIF, and they'll be going to state.
Rad.
So there's a lot that happens in my house.
Busy mom.
Yeah.
But you love it.
A lot. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. It's exhausting.
Well,
but I do love it. We fit in the rim to rim to
Yes.
rim in between all of it, right? So
which is incredible. Again, I love when people like you can be super nonchalant. Oh, we did the rim to rim, we fit it in. Like, most people like rim to rim to rim is
We
like
fit it
the most
in.
elite. Like, again, it's a 48 miles with how much terrain? You're not on an asphalt path.
no,
It's like full blown outdoor. You're self-contained, especially in winter. Like, what's the book? There's like 100 Ways to Die in the Grand Canyon. Like, you probably know that one very well.
I
Like,
do. I have that book.
I'm sure you do. When you're a Grand Canyon guide, you go, we're not going to die any of these ways or any other
Yeah.
way. So
Yeah.
I just love it's very pedestrian for you. And for the rest of us, we're like, dude, 48? Like, that's incredible.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah,
So neat.
it's fun.
All right. So those are the kids. You're out here. Kind of leads us to, so at the time, you were a stay-at-home mom, fully focused on the kids. Today, you're doing all these other things that we talked about.
Yeah.
Do you want to just shed a little light on what drove you to do this giant pivot? We don't have to go in all the detail, but
Yeah,
something
we won't go
happened.
into all the details,
but
but
something significant happened. You referenced it earlier that
Yeah.
made you change your whole world.
So Thanksgiving weekend 2013, my kids and I, the day before Thanksgiving, my kids, I took them to the two younger ones on a sailboat with one of my friends. We were out there doing our thing. And you know when you just know in your gut, your intuition that something's not right? And I knew something wasn't right. And this is important because I want people to understand that they know more than what they think they know. And that's what this whole thing has taught me. It's taught me how to listen to myself and also how to put the dots together, which is what we were just talking about when we started all of this. And also to remember that there's so much on the other side of those hardest moments that you have, okay? So Thanksgiving weekend, the night before, the day of Thanksgiving, my former husband, I couldn't get in touch with him. And it was like putting text messages out into cyberspace, but I wasn't getting anything in return. And I was like, something's going on that I don't know what's going on. And I don't know what it is, but I know something's not right. So that night, he didn't show up until, I don't know, it was like 10 o'clock, something like that. I don't even remember. But it's in the book. So much has happened since then. And when he finally showed up at home, he was tripping on drugs. And I had no idea. And what I found out over the course of the next 2-3 days is that he was living an entire double life. There were drugs involved. I found out that he was a triple addict. So there was all of this addictions to drugs, to alcohol, to just like all these other things, right? That I found through his phone, take it from there. And I had no idea, had no idea. And I think the reason why I didn't know is because my focus was always on the family unit. And it wasn't, I have this trust with people that I've learned how to shift through all of this, right? Like, how do you trust people again? This whole piece of trust. I trusted him with my life. And what I didn't realize was that there was this whole other thing happening, of which then, because I trusted him so much, I wasn't listening to myself. Right? And so that's where I go back to what this whole thing has taught me is listen to your gut, listen to your intuition, listen to who you are. And I learned a lot of that through the adventures that I've also been on since then, is being able to remember that I am my best navigational tool. Like, everything in me will take me true north if I listen to me to begin with, right? And so long story short.
Your compass works as long as you look at it?
Yeah, no kidding, right? Exactly, your compass works. So he ended up coming out as gay on top of it, which I had no idea of. And my whole thing through that first year after that happened was getting back up onto my feet. And how I did that was literally through paddling, through adventuring, going into the mountains. There was Labor Day weekend 1 year after all that happened. I was standing on a rock in Sequoia National Park. I talk about this in my keynote. And in the keynote, what I talk about is this lesson when I was hiking up the side of this mountain, and one of the guys I was hiking with kept putting rocks in my pack. Every time that I would put my pack down, I'd go to the bathroom, I'd come back, and then I'd find another rock in there. And I'm like, stop putting rocks in my pack. Like, I get you're trying to slow me down, but stop it. Like, this isn't cool. And it wasn't until I saw this little path on the side of the trail that I was on, and I ran over to it, and I was like, I want to see the view. And I looked out into the view, and I had this realization of, holy shit. And it was for an entire year, I was ruminating on all these problems and these things that were happening in my life, and why can't I fix it, and why can't I get to that next spot? And in that moment, I realized, just like those rocks that were being put into my pack, trying to slow me down, and I was having to keep taking those out, all of these lessons, all of these problems, these things that I was trying to fix, that I was carrying, weren't even mine, which is why I couldn't fix anything. And so I had to separate myself and go, okay, I am full on getting divorced. I am separating myself from all that shit that happened that wasn't mine, and I'm gonna find this version of me that I was intended to find all along because of what I'd gone through. Now again, it's pulling that power back to who I am. And it's not from a space of ego, it's not from a space of it's nothing like that. It's a space of, I wanna die leaving this earth knowing that I have done all that I wanted to do, that I was intended to do from the day that I took my first breath. So from the day that I took my first breath to the day that I take my last breath, I want to know that everything that that has happened, I've become that best version of me. And I didn't ask for all that crap. I mean, it sucked. Let me tell you, that was hard. And wow, look at what I've lived that second half of my life because of it, right? I never would be in this relationship if I hadn't done all of that. I would never have climbed room to room. I would never have led a blind woman on that incredible journey with you, right? Had I not done all of that. So, yeah, it was a hard time. It was a hard time.
Yeah, we don't wish that on anybody, but how you handle it and what comes from it is really a choice that you've made. I mean, you just gave a dissertation on the decision you made. It's the rocks in your pack. It's the, right? You got to jettison that stuff. I've been very fortunate not to go through this, but I don't know if you remember the story, but my wife, Randy.
Yeah, you told me this. Yeah.
It's the same story. We went to one dance in high school. We took a 20-year break, and here we are 15 plus years later. So,
which is amazing.
I know, it is amazing. And it's that familiarity thing. I know I'm moving around, but I totally get the Sarah Joe. It's the Mark and Randy story.
Yeah.
It really is. And we're super grateful, but none of that would have happened had she not gone through the really tough stuff that she had to go through to leave and then come find me.
Well, and the thing is that I know that sometimes people look at me and they're like, oh, but that just happens to her. Well, that's just who she is. No, let me tell you, you didn't see me back that day when he walked through that door, and I looked at him and I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? Who are you? I had never even done a drug in my life. I literally pulled my phone up and was scrolling. I was Googling and scrolling. What are the effects of cocaine? What are the effects of pot? What are the effects of, I'd never done anything. I was from a small farming village in the Midwest. Like, we didn't have that shit. The worst that we had was,
cow tipping
and grabbing a Budweiser, right? Or like an old wine cooler. Remember those, the big jugs of wine coolers in the field? Like, that's what I did. And so when I was in that moment scrolling, I remember thinking to myself, I will never be the person, forget him, I will never be the person that I was 1 minute before he walked through that door. I will never be that person again. Because I went from being the mom of like just thinking that everything was great to now being the person of having to pick up these pieces and truly dive into a life that I never would have imagined. Never would have. I mean, I saw shit and I had to face and confront things that no human being should ever have to confront. Yuck. And,
Well, I'm super proud of you because, again, where you are today, it hasn't been that long. I mean, 12 years. And you've changed.
Not that long.
You've changed. Not only have you changed your world and the world of your kids, but you've changed the lives of so many people through the things that you've done as a result of maybe that first Sequoia trip or whatever. Let me ask you this, Sarah, because what was it that got you out in nature as part of your recovery? Like you said, pretty quickly you're out doing these things, but where did that come from?
So I think it was, there's a couple of things. I grew up in the Midwest, obviously, like I said, and I was surrounded by cornfields. And I remember even as a little girl, there are little moments, right, that I remember. And one was in the middle of winter, I was walking down the street alone, and the snow was falling through the sky, and I looked up into the street light. Like, I remember this moment, and I was like, wow, look at how beautiful this is. And I feel like I'm the only person alive right now. I think I was like 10 or 12 years old. I was really young. And it was those little moments that I remember that it was almost like I'd been there before, so I knew what to do. And so I grabbed my paddleboard and I went into the ocean. And I was like, well, I'm just going to go out here and paddle. And then I would find myself getting really pissed off just about life. And I remember just like paddling straight out into the ocean, and I would find myself a couple miles out there, and I'm like, well, I guess I got to get back in somehow, figure this crap out. And it was like through this experience of just trusting myself. I mean, there was one time I was out there, I paddled 4 miles out onto the Pacific Ocean, and the fog came in, and I'm like, uh-oh, now what do I do? And I flipped my board around, and I knew enough through our experiences out there, listen to the waves, listen to the wind, follow the current, eventually you're going to get home. Again, how much that relates to us as human beings. Listen to yourself. You have the navigational tools. Trust yourself because you got yourself there, you can get yourself out. And I landed literally, and then I also had a little conversation with the dolphins. I was like, if the dolphins could show up, that would be great. Shit, the whole pot of dolphins showed up, literally. And then I landed myself right into the harbor of the Redondo Beach Harbor. And I was like, okay, if I can do this, what else can I do? And that's where it was like those moments from when I was a child brought me into the adult version of me, of go back to what you know. And I think that that's the piece that we as adults continuously forget, right? Like there are those moments as kids that it's not like you need to act like a kid. That's not what I'm saying. However, there are these moments of us as kids that can show up as adults and help to guide us into that next space. And this is what I talk about when it comes to, in the work that I do as well. I always say, when we can confront our problems, our solutions, and our ideas with the 3 Ps, which is what is your purpose, what is your why, that's part of your navigational tool. What is your the passion that you have within you? What drives you? You talk about passion. That's one of the 3 Ps. What's the thing that drives you to wake up every single morning and do the thing that you love to do? Why do you love the work that you do? Why do you do the podcast? And then there's that 3rd piece, which is the play. You got to get more creative with your life and stop thinking inside of the box.
Beautiful.
So
on point.
You could just keep me going. I could this is like a dissertation.
Hey, Sarah, sometimes I talk a lot and sometimes I listen a lot. And today, I'm in the listening seat.
I'm so sorry.
No. This is perfect. That's why we're here. And listen, I knew that this is the way it was going to go. I mean, this is what you do.
This is what I do.
But I just steer us a little bit to get the story because it's really cool.
Steer along.
Remember, part of what I strive to do is, I always say, I want people that know you really well to go, God, I didn't know that about Sarah. Like, I did not know that you were a teacher.
Yeah.
I didn't know, that's all new to me, which is super fun for me too. I mean, I'm learning a lot as we go. So you found nature in a number of ways as part of your, call it recovery, your path, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Paddling, you just kind of gave that. And I've known a lot of you, there's been a lot of social media over the years of you being out there and being way out on your own in a Patagonia jacket with whales, with dolphins. I was like, she's always in her Patagonia, but you're pretty far offshore, and that takes a level of confidence to be able to go and have the confidence that you're going to get back on your own. I mean, it is a big ocean, and fog and offshore paddling is pretty scary. I don't like fog when I'm way offshore because for all the skill you may have, it's still, you can't see where you're going.
You can't see where you're going.
We had that even in the bay yesterday. We couldn't see where we were going. So that's significant. But to have the confidence that you can navigate through it says a lot to me. But you also found the Grand Canyon, and then you took that even further, and then you also found ultra running.
Yeah.
So we're going to get into that right now. But the lead into this is how we got here. Do you remember where we met?
It was we did the paddle run paddle together.
What's the paddle run paddle, just for people's sake?
We paddled over to Catalina Island. We ran the marathon. Well, we paddled over on Friday.
Yep.
We ran the marathon on Saturday. We paddled home on Sunday. Some of the most epic moments.
Some of the most epic. It's one of my favorite things. And
we need to do it again. I
know.
actually have wondered about that. I'm like, what happened? Why aren't
they stopped doing it? But doesn't mean we have to stop doing it.
Bam.
Right. It's so fun, and it's the best marathon, and there's no pressure, and there's a big group, and we did that with Joe Bark and that whole world, I think you did that a few years, I did that a few years, and it's one of the favorite things I've done. But the way it happened is, that course is 22 miles. I think we did Palos Verdes to the Isthmus or 2 harbors, 22 miles, the shorter of the routes. Yeah. But it's a cruise, not a race. We're all hanging together, and you're out there all day, and me being a talker and you being a talker, I knew a bunch of the people, but there's a bunch of people I didn't know. And I was like, so I was just paddling from person to person, chatting. We're out there it's a slow day. And I paddled over to you. You were on a stand-up. I was on a prone, and here we are.
It's a little harder for the stand-up, I got to tell you, because
stand-up's the hardest thing to do going across that.
Yeah, because you get the wind against you. So it was a little bit more difficult for me because all of you guys were on these prones, and you're like, doo-doo-doo-doo. I'm like, okay, this is a little bit
Prone's not quite do-do-do either, though.
I'm not saying it is, but you know what I mean. And then the wind picks up, because remember that, I don't remember if we were on that same one, but the wind picked up that last part in. And I think I was one of the last people that actually got in because I was standing up, and you're literally going into the wind, and I'm like, yo, this is not easy. So,
Most people would say 22 miles of anything isn't easy, but for you, but we met because I paddled over to you. I'm like, hey, we started chatting, and then we have the whole next day to talk on the marathon.
Yeah.
Because I think that year I walked it. That was my first year. I think the year I met you was the first time I did the marathon and the paddle run paddle. And I walked it years after I started running it. And then, and then you paddle back on the third day and you're a little bit more sore that time, right? Coming back. But that's where we met, which is epic. So kind of shines a light on, kind of our history, which is fun.
Right.
And then the next piece was, I got the call up from you. I think it was the next year. What did we do together that was one of you've done more of it. That was the only time I've done it, but it was one of the most incredible things I've done.
So I had already led a female blind para-athlete through the Grand Canyon. She wanted to go on one of my retreats, and so I took her on that.
This is Sean
Cheshire. And then the following year, we ended up, we were hiking out from the retreat, and she said, I want to do the Grand Canyon rim to rim to rim. And I was like, yo, I don't even have, this is what I said to her. I go, I don't even have any blind or any sighted friends that want to do that. I said, I'll guide you. Shit, I'll do it. And so I'd already done, before I met Joe, I'd already done the rim to rim to rim because we ended up guiding her to set and break the world's record of hiking the Grand Canyon as a blind woman, rim to rim to rim. And we did it in 24 hours and 15 minutes straight.
You are,
she's a
but
beast.
she's unbelievable. I'll tell a
Yes.
little bit of my experience with Sean. But
so then fast forward, she wanted to do a marathon. And so she came out, we did the LA marathon and we needed people to guide. So I called you.
Yeah.
I'm like, you wanna join in on this? Like I need somebody that we can trust that is also able to do this and can communicate very clearly when needed, because when you're guiding a blind woman, there are people in the front and there are people in the back, and then there's the rester. Like you got to have some rest as well, because when you're guiding somebody anytime, it's a lot of mental, like you need to be on all the time. And then when you're guiding somebody that's blind, you have to be explaining to them, this is what's going on here, make sure they're careful of this, you're creating space for them, you're creating the course for them, because obviously there's people around, and so you're creating that for the experience for them to be able to do what they need to do safely. So I asked you, I was like, you want to do this? And you're like, yes. And so that's how we ended up doing that then too.
And Sarah, that was one of the coolest things I've ever done. I mean, running that, getting the experience to run with somebody like Sean and meeting Sean the night before. I've told this story a million times. I think this was like 8 years ago, but I came over to the house and you and everybody, all the other guys, all the friends were there, and I watched her cooking using sharp knives and putting it back in the block and walking around. I was like, there's no way this woman's blind.
Yeah.
She was unbelievable. And then someone left a chair out and she walks around the corner, boom, right into the chair. And she said like, George, you never leave a chair out at a blind woman's house. And everybody laughed. But like, until that moment, I was like, she's full of it. There's no way. She's the most impressive human. Didn't she go on to do Everest?
She attempted to, well, this is the sad story, which this is hard. So she attempted to do Everest, and then something happened at the base camp heading up. And I don't know if it was the pressure, you'd have to ask her, but there was something with the pressure, and she ended up actually losing some of her hearing now.
Are you kidding?
No. So she's having a problem with hearing now as well. I know. So that's a tough one.
Because her ability to navigate the world was, like I said, one of the most amazing things. And just for context, running, and what's fun about, one of the many things that was fun is we got to start first with like all the wheelchairs and all these incredible athletes with special circumstances. And so we got to take off first. And so we got to watch the elite pack come by us and watch people running, sub 5 marathon. Like it was incredible to watch. But running with, like we did a diamond shape around her with you and whoever was taking turns doing the actual guiding, whispering in her ear the whole time. Like, can you imagine people, like, you're running a marathon with your eyes closed. So someone's calling out every crack and crevice this is LA, so the streets are not perfect. Every manhole cover, every little thing, and the runner has to be able to navigate it.
Yeah.
But we ran, I was usually at the front of this diamond, and it was really cool, but we had 40,000 people running. And so you're like, it was pretty interesting. There's some interesting interactions with other people. Like, what are you doing? But what an incredible experience. So thank you again for giving that to me. It was so cool. So cool. And she never fell. Like she blows my mind. But
I think she might have tripped. Well, she definitely tripped in the Grand Canyon. But
I
trip in the Grand Canyon.
For sure.
I trip.
For sure. So
Yeah.
let me ask you this. So back to nature and all these things and the ultra running, because you've done the Catalina 50 quite a few times, or at least
5 years.
5 years.
Yeah, I did it 5 years in a row.
And I didn't even know that when I first met you. You had already done that. And I was like, oh, we're going to do the marathon. And you're like, oh, I've done the 50. Like 5 times. So what, let me ask, why?
Well,
why all of these things? What did you get from it? What did it do for you?
So here's the thing about going through, first of all, 70% of us in the United States will go through one major trauma in our lifetime. Trauma creates anger. You wonder why we have angry people in this world? Because they don't work through their anger. And so for me, I had so much, it wasn't even anger. It was frickin' rage. I've never knew myself as a raging person until, and people look, even back then, they were like, oh, she's just such a happy person, da da da. I'm like, oh no, underneath all of that, there is some fucking rage. Excuse me, but there was. And so I needed to work through that, and I knew it, and I could feel it in me. And the best way to work through your anger and your rage is through movement. And I never put all of this together until I read a book by Florence Williams called The Nature Fix, who, by the way, ended up being my mentor, and by the way, is now my friend, who, by the way, I now run retreats with.
Wow. Yeah,
it's very interesting. Talk about keep moving forward. So, and one of the things that happens is your trauma will stay it literally is in you on a cellular level. So if you can imagine, you're angry, but you're not even understanding why you're angry, and it literally is in your cells. And so through the movement, and then you add nature into it, which is a very healing piece to it, and you're literally rewiring your brain on like a physical and within internally, you're rewiring your brain while also working through the anger on a cellular level. I didn't even understand all this was happening to me. All I knew is that I was like, all right, well, I just want to like go do something. And I would take myself out into nature. And then I started understanding the science behind it, and I'm like, yo, this is why this is working. But I gotta tell you, when I was training, I would run into lampposts. My brain was so offline. I wasn't connected. My mind was not connected to my body, and I couldn't figure out why. And I would run into shit, and I'm like, I've got bruises and things. I had bruises and things to actually show for it. And then once
Hold on, but what causes that? What causes the separation of body and mind?
Trauma brain.
So even
literally,
you're
trauma
running,
brain. Yeah.
physically running, and there's just a disconnect.
There's a disconnect. Yeah, your body is not connected to the mind. And when you go through a major trauma like that, for me, it was such severe betrayal that my mind was, I wasn't there. I wasn't like fully capable. I lost my memory. I couldn't read. Like literally, like I'm not joking, it was bad. I can remember stuff, but if my kids would have to remind me. They'd say, hey, make sure that you pick me up at 9:00 from water polo. Hey mom, make sure that you da-da-da. And I finally had to explain to them, I'm like, you guys, I cannot, like you can tell me something, but I cannot fully remember it because of the trauma that I'm in, right? And so, reading, I couldn't read. That's very common for people that live through trauma. And now I'm fine. I mean, I wrote a freaking book and everything, right?
Yes, you did.
But that's what kept me going, is that I started healing and coming back home to me. I was finding myself again. I'm like, yo, I'm healing. This is amazing.
So you found out the science of nature by way of going through it and recognizing the benefits that you were experiencing. And you're like, there's more to it than, like, why do I feel good after I go do this? Or why am I drawn to do this? Is that what
That's what got me into the work, because I was also in a support group at the time, and we had all started the support group at the same time, but yet my healing and my growth and my ability to actually make good, healthy choices, getting out of my marriage, selling my house, getting out of the situation, it was so much more prevalent and so much more quicker. It was so much more quickly, it was happening much more quickly than the people that I was in the support group with. And so the therapists in the support group were like, what are you doing that nobody else is doing? Wow. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I paddle before I come in. I go hike mountains. I go do things for myself. And they're like, there's something there. Like, you got to do something with this.
Well, we all think, I mean, that's really amazing that you found it and then it turned into, you're like, not only did you identify it, but other people are like, why are you
something's
responding so well? Why is this working so well for you?
Yeah.
Because Randy I say it all the time, I always love her a little bit more after a big workout out in the ocean, or after a marathon, whatever. I mean, we can go into the science of performance, like how good you feel and all the positive benefits of doing stuff physically and moving, to your point.
Right.
But you also used a term that I picked up through one of the many things I read about you but prior to this, but it was a term, I don't know if it's a real term or if it's your term, but it's nature deficit disorder.
No, that's not my term.
That's not your term.
That's
Really?
not my term.
Okay.
No.
So it supports exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
So there's a real term.
There's a real
nature
term.
deficit disorder.
Yeah. And
Wow.
we literally are, we have become deficit to the thing that we're actually supposed to be most connected to, which is being outside. And actually, it's funny that Florence Williams, who I do these retreats with, like she wrote a book on it. There's other people that have written books on it. I don't do the whole like deep research stuff on it, but I read about it and then I deliver it, right? But yeah, there's a whole thing on it, nature deficit disorder.
Well, I mean, it's so funny. While I was waiting for you, I was sitting out in the sun. I had my eyes shut for 3 minutes, and I was like, I can feel my body just relaxing.
Yeah.
Right? 3 minutes in the sun, and I was like, I just need to do this in the middle of my day way more often, right?
Yeah, seriously.
Because especially in the world of go, 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 like I felt it immediately. And I know this from my life because I do a lot of the things that you do, not to the same degree or same level that you do, but I'm out there because I get such benefit from it.
Right.
That's the driver for me. For you, this has turned into something much bigger than probably you ever maybe thought.
Never thought I would have in this stuff.
But
no.
let's walk through. So at the time you're going through this and you're doing this naturally, and you get into the endurance running and the paddling and the hiking and the Grand Canyon for all the reasons you've talked about. Talk about the next step when you start taking other people with you.
Yeah. So I knew it. So kind of backtrack really quick. The summer before my life imploded, I was sitting on a bed in Colorado with one of my dear friends. And I told her, literally in Denver, she and I were sitting there and she goes, so like, what's going on in your, like, how are you? And I said, I feel like I need to be giving back more and I don't know what the hell that looks like. I feel like I barely tapped into my life and I'm frustrated. So.
And this is before.
This is before my life imploded.
And you've also said that was when you were, after teaching, when you were being a full-time mom, you were always longing for that flame, right?
Always.
Okay, so this is the continuation.
Always.
Okay.
I couldn't figure out my purpose. I was like, why the hell am I here? I know that I need to be doing more. So she said to me, well, why don't you start a blog? And I was like, I don't want to start a blog. Like, I don't want to. She goes, well, why don't you like inspire people through the stuff that you do out in nature? Because she knows I was also like even back then, like I loved being out in nature and doing things. I was like, I don't know. So fast forward, my life implodes. Fast forward, that was the big piece, right? Like that was when I realized I couldn't do the things that I wanted to do because I hadn't lived the experiences to deliver what I wanted to do, right? So I'm in the support group with my friend or with my clients, not my clients, what the hell, I'm now on the other side of that, with my therapists and those people that were also going through it, which by the way, those therapists are now my friends, colleagues. So, and in the moment when she said to me, do something, create something with the experience and how you are actually coming through it so much more quickly and in such a more powerful way. Do something with that. So I decided at that point, I'm like, I want to take people through nature. Like, I don't even know what the hell that looks like, but I'm going to figure it out. And I loved the Grand Canyon, and I loved the metaphor for the Grand Canyon for me in my life, which is in any problem, anything that you are facing, you got to go deep into it and then come out, rise as a different human being. So it's literally learning and teaching how to descend before you ascend, which is what now I'm working with businesses on, leadership. I'm doing this in teams. I'm working with companies where they're like, our entire culture is effed up. We need help. And I'm like, please, let me just descend with them for a little bit. And I promise you, you will see the rise. right? You're going to see you're going to ascend from what we are going to be doing together. And so what started as a space just for me to go to, I then started taking executives of Fortune 500 companies. I took Sean, right, the blind para-athlete. I took the U.S. men's water polo team. I've run so many retreats in that space that people ask me all the time, how many people have you taken? How many have you done? I don't even know. The bottom line, though, is in the work that I now do, it's about descending into your problems, into your change, those challenges, and ascending in agility and lasting growth, in personal growth. Because in all of the retreats and everything that I have done, yes, there's been healing. Yes, 70% of us have lived through trauma. No, we don't all talk about it. We are all living it, though. We don't dive into the trauma. We dive into the other side of it, right? And it's all about your own personal leadership and how do you tap into that to become that leader in your life. Because when we can do that, we can be leaders for others as well. And so that's the work that I know. That's how it's transcended. So I still do them. The Grand Canyon is going through its own metamorphosis right now that people probably don't know about, but they're redoing all sorts of stuff. So I have one in June that I'm running. And then I've got asked with Florence Williams to run these retreats. So I'm running one. I've been doing those for a number of years, and we have one coming up again in July and outside of Telluride in the San Juan Mountains. And it's fun. The thing that I love doing more than anything now, though, how it's shifted, my work has shifted, is into keynote speaking. So I literally take these experiences from the Grand Canyon to the stage, and I work using literally like drone footage in the background where I literally take people into the Grand Canyon and we talk about what is the change, what is the challenge, what is the problem that you are facing, what is your canyon, and let's rise from there.
What is your canyon?
What is your canyon?
That's a great question.
And we rise from there. Yeah. So it's rad. And I think that the whole thing is, and this is what Joe and I just did a podcast on this. We think that age or whatever the hell it is, we look at, I only have this much time left and I can't do it, blah, blah, blah. And I look at it as, don't waste the time wondering or freaking out over it. Freaking use that time to create the things that you want to be experiencing. And how can I give back?
I mean, yes. How do you get people in whatever format, because you're reaching people so many different ways between your in-person coaching, the podcast, the keynotes, the coaching groups. How do you get people that have maybe never done this before? Or if there's people that there's so many things that people could be that aren't reaching their peak.
Yeah.
How do you speak to those people? How do you instill that motivation? How do you get people to do that first step?
So this is we could go way into this, but honestly, I don't think that people, especially in the world that we're in today, are heard, seen, or valued. And so sitting in somebody's presence and simply saying, I hear you, I see you, I appreciate this time together, that alone will spark whatever it is that needs to be sparked. That's what I have found in the work that I have done with so many people, right? It's literally just saying, hey, I get it. Let's just stop and let's have this moment. And then let's shift the energy and shift the direction and navigate differently. And there's all sorts of tools and things that I teach. That alone, though, when somebody can be heard, seen, and valued, that will start to change everything for them.
It's so amazing. And there was a gentleman that sat right here named Matt Immersion, which is the mattering mindset. Every Monday matters. It's almost the exact same language, and it has the same impact. He's recognized what you recognize, which is until you accomplish making people feel seen, heard, and valued, almost nothing else matters, right? So that's the jumping off point to growth or recovery or whatever you want to call it. Is that the way you see it?
Yeah, well, because people shut down, and I think that so many leaders don't understand this. They're like, well, why does my culture not what I thought it would be? Or why are we not having profitable growth? Or why aren't we, like, what's going on here? And I'm like, when people are not heard, they will shut down. And the more that they shut down, the harder it is for you to get through to them. Because they literally are like, why even bother asking?
And that transcends business, doesn't it?
Yes, 100%. You know, I'm working with a business right now here in LA, and it's what's really cool is when I keep going back to the leaders, I'm like, well, did you know about this person? Did you know this person did that? Did you know that this person da-da-da? They're like, I didn't even know that. And I'm like, that's the point, is that you have to start having the conversations. You don't need to dive into all that happened in their life. It's not about that. Allow them to give you at least the highlights. Because when they can deliver the highlights to you, you can grow together. You don't need the whole documentary. Again, go back to that. I don't need the whole documentary. But what I do need and what I do want is to know the highlights so that we can grow together from that space.
I back it 1,000,000%. I've always said our company is a culture-driven company. Without the culture and without people being engaged and feeling heard and being part of the team or the family, none of the good work that we do happens.
Yeah.
Like, it all starts with people feeling seen, heard, and valued, right? I so agree with that.
People will not always remember what you said. They will always remember how you made them feel.
Bing, bang, boom. 100%. Yeah. Love that. How do you feel when you get, or let me ask you this. Question one, what kind of feedback do you get? Or maybe what's your favorite kind of feedback? How do you know what you're doing matters, regardless of the way it was presented through all your different avenues? How do you know the impact you're having, and then how does that make you feel?
So it's, oh gosh, the messages that I get from people, it's so, like, I love hearing from people of how the impact that the work that I've done has had in their life, right? My clients, most of my clients, I still stay in touch with, even from however many years ago. I was talking to one on the way here, and I told you this. What I will share is her and her sister were at a pivotal point, and her sister chose to go one way, and her sister chose to go the other. And it's in those pivotal moments that we can either break or make it. And for me, it's watching, just like it was when I was teaching, it's watching my clients now, which was my students back then, create. If it wasn't through the art that they were creating as children, it's in the lives that they're creating today as adults. And for me, I notice things that people don't always notice, which is like I can watch and say, okay, that person's doing this great work in the world today. It's not, I don't need to have the conversation back and forth about it, but I watch what's happening in their lives. If it's the wedding that I went to last summer of one of my former clients, or if it's the doctor that I took down on in, and she's happier than she's ever been, and I'm watching it on social media, and I'm like, dude, she just bought the place that she talked about when we were in the GC. Like, how rad is that? She started her business in a different way. How rad is that? Like, I don't need the direct, whatever it is. I watch, and for me, that's just like the coolest thing ever. It's just so much fun to witness other people's growth because of what we've done together. Here's the thing, though. I remember when I would say to my old therapist all the time, who, again, she's now one of my dear friends, and I would say, you changed my life. And she's like, I didn't change your life. I gave you the opportunity to change your own. And for me, that's what it is, witnessing my clients and witnessing the businesses that I'm working with now. Like, I emailed one of the guys, the president of this, or that I'm working with, and I literally said to him, the manager, and I said, I know that you can't see it right now, but I can see where this is going to be going. So thank you for trusting me with this process, because it's going to be coming full circle because of what we're doing. So there's this vision that I can see that others can't always see, which is okay. I mean, because of what I've lived through, because of my experiences.
Could you have done any of this? Could you have the same authentic impact and maybe the same vision that you have that influences everything that you do, had you not gone through that?
No. There was a moment when I was walking out of the canyon, the doctor that I was talking about, she swore to me, I'm never getting married again. Like, I'm done with relationships, blah, blah, blah. And we were hiking out of the Grand Canyon, and I said to her, I don't know what it is. Keep yourself open, because in 2 weeks you're going to meet somebody. I go, I don't even know why I'm saying this, but for some reason I need to tell you this. And she's like, I'm never getting married again, blah, 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 blah. Literally 2 weeks. 2 weeks later. And she ended up meeting who is now her husband. She got married. She literally changed everything. And so it's not that I have like some weird, blah, 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 or what. We don't need to go into all that stuff. It's literally just a knowing. And the knowing comes from that moment when I stood in front of my ex-husband, now ex-husband, and I was like, I will never be the same person because of this moment right here. And when I could start to put the dots together and realize all those times in my life when I listened to somebody else instead of myself, that is when I regained the power. I'm like, okay, this is my true north. Like, this is me listening and saying, okay, if I'm getting this intuition coming up, there's a reason for that. That's where I know I got to go this direction. That's when I know I got to deliver this message. That's when I know I need to blah, 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 whatever. Blah, blah, blah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Well, let me ask you this. No, this is so not blah, blah, blah. This is so
You know what
awesome.
I mean,
I love the story. Thank you. For anybody that might be going through a traumatic experience right now, how do you advise them to, I think it's a little different than the question I asked before, which is what's the first step? But like, is there a message that you can give to people that are going through something right now, whether it be to build confidence or help them with some clarity that what life can be like again in 2, 5, 10 years?
So I would say, whose rocks are you carrying?
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big one for me. That was a big one for me, because the rumination sucked, where I was like ruminating on all these problems. And then once I realized none of these are even, 90% of them are not even mine, I'm like, well, I can lighten my load right there. So when you and this is in the work that I do, in the 5 steps that I do in problem solving for resilience, the number one thing I ask is, whose problem are you carrying? And when we start from there, we can start to realize that so much of what we've carried in our life isn't even ours. And our load gets so much lighter. And when our load gets lighter, we can be more free to do the things that we choose in the way that we want.
Yeah. That adage, every time you say that, it takes me back to the adage that I recall and I've used over the years, which is, don't let somebody else put their monkey on your back. Right? It's not my monkey. I'm not carrying your monkey.
Yeah.
You keep it to yourself.
Keep your own circus happening over there.
Why were those guys putting rocks in your pack?
Well, they thought it was funny. I thought it was a funny joke too. But here's the thing that's really funny to me is that it happened like 5 freaking times. And they weren't small. They were like big freaking rocks. I would put my pack down, go to the bathroom, do whatever I had to do. And I'd come back and I'm like just throwing it back on. I think they were trying to slow me down, but they were also they were just like dear friends of mine. Just messing with me. And it wasn't until that moment. But 5 times, lesson will keep being handed to you until you learn it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the other thing. Like, it's going to keep happening until you learn the lesson.
Yeah, the universe can talk to you all day long. If you're not open to it, you're not going to hear it.
Oh my God. I was like, guys, seriously?
Hey, but how many times have you told that story from the stage?
Well, do you want the funny story of this? Is they snapped a picture of me when I was out on that big rock having my moment, and they gave it to me. And I posted that picture on Facebook, and then the National Park Service grabbed that picture. And that same friend who snapped it, he went back to Sequoia to go camping, and he was in one of their ranger talks, and the ranger stood up there and said, don't do what this woman is doing. She's standing on this rock. Don't do this. And he's like, man, if you only knew that that moment was so transformative for her, and she was actually safe, but they actually took it from my Facebook.
That's
and
so
they
funny,
used it.
Sarah. That's
I
classic.
know.
Well, let me ask you this. There's lots of photos of you out in the Grand Canyon and on rocks, but with red high heels. Can you explain that? It's a very Sarah, like if you see a woman, a photo of a woman with red heels out in nature, it's this woman right here.
Sometimes I actually have a dress on too, because my TED Talk, I had bought this amazing dress for my TED Talk and they wouldn't let me wear it. And so I ended up taking it out into nature, and I was like, well, this is like the coolest dress. I'm going to wear it out in nature. So the red heels happened because I was getting questioned a lot that first year, that people started finding stuff out, because I kept everything a secret for the first year, and then I started telling people, and people were like, well, what is it that she's doing? Why is she doing this? Did she know any of this was happening in her life? And just like a lot of things were happening. So I was like, screw this. I had this idea. I'm going to take a pair of red heels to the top of Mount Baldy and put them on and show that a woman can be many things. And so she can guide people in the Grand Canyon. She could stand on stage. She can do whatever the hell she wants. So I did. And then I posted on Facebook and it went crazy. And so then I started carrying my red heels everywhere. And so I was carrying them to the top of Mount Whitney. I had them on the John Muir Trail for those 22 days. I took them on the high route. I've had them in the Grand Canyon. I've had lots of other people wear them and just snap pictures of like, this is me. It was like, I can, this is the play part.
It seems like, I love that. And I've seen a lot of those photos over the years, but it also seems like it's like, it almost seems like a message. If you're going to go so far as to carry a pair of shoes on your pack when you're packing, like you're carrying extra rocks for yourself, but they're valuable for a reason. Like it's more than just a photo op. Like that seems like a real statement piece for you. Is that? I mean,
yeah, it is.
Otherwise, you're not going to carry that stuff.
It is.
Right?
It is. It's a real statement piece for me. It's also going back to, when people look at me out in the middle of wherever, standing on a mountain, or I'm like dragging my ass up the side of something or whatever. And then there's that other piece of me where, I'm like standing on stage in front of 1,000 people delivering a message, right? Like, I'm sitting in a room with leaders, teaching them how to be better leaders. I'm at my son's water polo and basketball game, and I'm doing lots of different things, and that I think is the most beautiful piece of it. I'm running with you, right? Like we're paddling over to Catalina Island. We're doing all this stuff. Like there are many versions of us. Embrace them all.
For sure. There's a huge message here that is maybe the summary of all the parts, which is you have no idea what you're capable of.
Yeah,
you have no idea when you're at the bottom of your own personal Grand Canyon where you can ascend to, because 12 years ago, on the day that happened, would you have ever guessed where you are today?
No, it actually gives me chills. Like it makes me want to cry. Like truly, if no one can understand a moment like that unless you are that person in that moment. Like no one, absolutely no one. And I would say one of the things that I know people don't like to hear is you're not alone. And I promise you that whatever hard thing you're going through right now, you are not alone. Because I've been there. Like it sucks. There is nothing worse than feeling like you don't know what's right and what's wrong, what is true and what's not, what happened and what didn't. Like there's nothing worse than not knowing and then having to figure it out along the way. That's the beauty of it. Like the beauty of it is finding yourself along the way. So no, I would never, ever have imagined that I'd be where I am. Dude, like who would have thought I'd be in a relationship again? Are you kidding me? I was like, peace out. I'm good. Like never would have thought I'd be this happy. Ever.
With a guy from Wisconsin.
From the 7th
grade or 9th grade or whatever.
Seriously,
Who would have known?
Who would have known?
Right.
I mean, I remember that moment. He and I laugh about this all the time. Like we always go back to that moment where I'm like, I remember like walking into that catechism class at church and just being like, dude, we didn't use that word back then, but you know what I'm saying. I was like, oh, he's so cute.
You don't use that word in the Midwest at all.
No, you don't. But I was like, he's so cute. And then, who would have thought? And I think that that's actually the beauty of life as well, of living, is the fact that you can start to put all those little pieces together. You know what I'm saying? Like those moments from when you were a child all the way up to this moment right now. And just remember that you have so many more super cool moments that are being created. Should I give you one of my biggest tools?
Let's go.
One of the biggest tools that I use is, and I just shared this when I was in the Grand Canyon. I shared it on my LinkedIn page. When I'm stuck and when I don't know what to do, or if I'm like, geez, am I on the right course? I ask, for me, it's 108 because I feel like I'm going to live to 108. I don't know why. It's always been my number. I ask my 108-year-old self who's taking her last breath, what would she tell me about this moment right now? What advice would she give? Would she be proud of me? And what would she say? And having that distinction, I promise you that having that knowledge, that wisdom of your future self telling you, present self, it changes everything. It changes everything. So if I'm like getting ready to go on stage and I'm nervous, or if I am walking into a room of leaders and I'm like, do I deserve to be here? Because we all have that. We all have the imposter syndrome come in. We all have the self-doubt come in. We all have the, what the hell am I doing at this moment, come in, right? That wisdom is in you. And he will, they will instill it in you at that moment.
I love that. Well, not to mention, if you're 51...
I got a lot of living to do yet.
You're not even halfway done, sister. You got a lot.
Isn't that awesome?
And what I also like about it is, if anybody watches this or knows Sara, like your energy and your outlook and your passion and just everything about it, like I believe you'll get to 108. And I think you'll be climbing the Grand Canyon right up until that day.
I hope so.
You seem like, but I think there's so much that life can be hard. It can feel short. It can feel long. It can feel daunting, but like just doing the stuff that really matters and reflecting on it and using all these tools. Like there's so many tools, your book, listen to Live Boldly with Sara.
Yeah.
We'll share all of it. I commend you for your outlook, and I hope that this is residual on others, because it's your story is incredible. As I said, like 12 years, look at what you've accomplished, how incredibly different, because from a stay-at-home mom, which is one of the hardest jobs in the world, to keynote speaker and author, podcast, guide, mentor, coach, all of these things happened in a very short geologic time, a short amount of time, and look at the impact you're having. Yeah. It's incredible. I'm just so proud of you, and it's so rad to watch. And again, you've got another 57 years to keep adding on. I can't imagine what you'll be doing over those years.
I'm excited. I'm excited to see, and I'm excited because I don't know, because I don't want to know. I really don't want to know. I really don't want to know. I want to experience it along the way. Yeah. Yeah. If somebody would have told me this, I would have been really bummed. I'm like, don't tell me. Let me unwrap my own freaking gift. Thank you very much.
Are there things on your wish list, though?
There are. I mean, Joe and I were just looking at this super cool trail in Greenland that we're looking at doing next year. I'm like, ooh, actually this year. We're like, let's do that, because I always have an adventure every year. And now that we completed the Sierra High Route, I'm like, what's next? And so I want to go to the Arctic. I want to go to the Antarctic. I want to go to, so I have like things like that. I want to go see the Northern Lights in Finland. And then, I really, in terms of my business, I want to deliver this to as many people as possible. So there you go. I want to go into people's businesses and help them to get there. I want to go onto the stage. I want to, I want to speak at conferences. And the thing is I know that a lot of people are like, I want to speak in front of 10,000 people. I want to speak in the rooms that want me there. That's where I want to go. Ooh, yeah.
They want you there,
too. They want me there, too.
How did they know you were here? Wow.
That's where I want to go. I want to go there.
Where you can have impact.
Where I can have impact. So if it's in a room of 10 or if it's a room of 100,000, 120,000, whatever it is. I want to go there. To me, that's because I wouldn't be here if obviously the world didn't need what I needed, right? And so wherever that is where I want to go, which is why I don't want to know where that is, because I'll just be told where that is.
Okay, however, magic wand moment. You get a phone call. What's the one phone call for the one business or group? Is there one where you're like, I want the phone call from? Is there one? I'm just curious because
that's interesting.
If you put it out in the world.
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing. That's an interest. So I will say the one that we're working on right now, I want to go into Epic in Verona, Wisconsin, for many reasons. Number one, I'm from Black Earth, so I'm not very far from there. My very first teaching experience was in Verona. That's where I did my student teaching. And I love how that was created, because if you've ever been on their campus, their buildings, every building is a different theme. It's just a really cool way for them to be doing business. And to me, I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison. It would be like taking it home. So that's one of the places that I'm working on right now with my son to get into. That said, I mean, Patagonia, I want to do all of them. I want to get, if I don't have sponsorship, I'd freaking love to get sponsorship by Patagonia, Merrell, because I have literally 16 pairs of the same shoes that I wear everywhere. And I'm not joking. That's where I would love to link up with them and be able to take this message as big as it needs to be.
Well, you seem like the perfect candidate to speak to any of those organizations, so that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Listen, Sara, I am so proud of you. It's so cool to have watched this, knowing what I knew. I know a lot more now, but knowing where I met you and what you'd already done and accomplished and worked through, but where you are today has been, not that it's been impressive, it's just been so rad to watch how you've done it and how you've ascended to. There's a lot of ascension in your life.
There's a lot of ascension.
The impact you're having
Thank you.
is so neat. And let me ask, this will be the last question. How important is a coach or a mentor in somebody's life?
It's vital. It's vital. It's absolutely vital. And I wouldn't be where I am. And I put this back to my mom, right? She was my mentor. She was my everything. And so I still, every time I take steps, everywhere I walk, I feel like she's there walking with me. I think that it's underutilized. I think it's something that we think, oh, we can just go walk this by myself. I can save the money. That's a big thing. It saddens me because I think that there's so much good that can come from listening to that person that's there to teach you and to be that guide. Judy Faulkner, she's the one that started Epic, and when I read about her, I was like, damn, that's a journey. That's a journey, because it's like a journey from starting something that was an idea into something that is used everywhere in the world, right? Mm-hmm. So find those people that also give you that inspiration and that empowerment, and listen, read about them, listen, and let them also be your guide. Somebody that's been there. You don't want to just be that's the difference. You don't want somebody that's just read about it. You want somebody that's actually lived it, because they deliver what other people cannot.
Yeah. Like you.
Thanks.
Listen, if somebody wants to find you or any of again, we have books and the podcast, what's the best way? If somebody wants to find more about you, Sara, what's the best way? Where would you direct them? My
website, SaraSchulting-Kranz.com. I'm sure it'll all be in the show notes because my name's very long. Ridiculous, I know. You can email me, Sara@SaraSchulting-Kranz.com, or email Carson. I can now say that, Carson.
Your son.
My son, Carson@SaraSchulting-Kranz.com. And those are the two best ways. But yeah, everything through the website, and I'm on all social media, LinkedIn. You can message me through there. I'm always on LinkedIn, Instagram. I'm not on TikTok and I'm not on X, but I am on Instagram and Facebook as
Awesome.
well. So
Well, we'll share that in the show notes. Sarah, it is so rad to have you here. I'm so proud of you, and it's
Thank
such
you.
a great story, and it's so fun that what we've done in the past, and I really am excited to do something. I got to get on one of these retreats with you at some point or something.
Jump in. We
I
have
want
the Grand Canyon, the one in June, and then also we do have the one it's the women's only is in July in the San Juan Mountains. Sorry.
Good for you.
Sorry.
That's all right. Hey,
but if
I
you're
got time.
interested, please message me and we'll get you in. They're a blast. They're
Awesome.
a blast.
You're awesome. Thank you so much for being on the Passion
Thank
Project.
you.
You're, like I said, the perfect person to have here. Thanks for sharing the story, and just keep making real impact, because I know it's really important what you're doing out there, and everybody benefits from
Well,
people like you.
I appreciate you having me on. Keep being amazing.
I'm going to do my best. Thank you,
Thanks.
Sarah.
Thank you.